This episode is brought to you by the Victoria's Secret On Point collection. Introducing On Point. From all-day comfort for everyday errands to intense support for high-impact workouts, our new collection is up to the challenge. The On Point collection, only at Victoria's Secret.
From the newsrooms of WBUR and GBH, I'm Arun Roth. Welcome to Consider This, from Boston, where the city's preliminary mayoral election is tomorrow. Joining me to discuss where things stand a day in advance of the election is GBH's Soraya Wintersmith and WBUR's Anthony Brooks. They've been covering the mayoral race. Thanks for joining us, Soraya.
Thanks, Arun.
Anthony, welcome.
Hey, great to be here, Arun.
So, Soraya, let's start with you. We have 5 major candidates in this race. Can you tell us about the state of play right now?
Polls have shown consistently that at-large City Councilor Michelle Wu is the race's frontrunner. And many political observers are saying that the rest of the field, the 4, and depending on who you talk to, maybe just 3 of the 4, are competing to make sure that they get the other slot to advance to the November general election. The 3 women, I think most people are focusing on them because John Barros, the former economic development chief under former Mayor Marty Walsh, has struggled to gain traction in the polls and in fundraising. So he's all but been discounted, unfortunately. But nothing is official until polls close on Tuesday night. But the focus is really on the 3 other women in the race. That's City Councilor Anissa Asabi-George, City Councilor Andrea Campbell, and Acting Mayor Kim Janey.
And Anthony, you were out reporting this weekend as the candidates were, jockeying for position, making their final pitch to voters. What did they have to say?
Well, this was a busy weekend for all 5 of the candidates. They were shaking hands with business owners in Roxbury. They were dancing with a neighborhood group in Dorchester. They held Get Out the Vote rallies from Grove Hall to Chinatown. And in fact, that's where I caught up with the frontrunner, the person we believe to be the frontrunner, Michelle Wu, Saturday evening at a very well-attended rally where Senator Elizabeth Warren gave a plug to her former law student. For her part, Wu is promising to bring progressive change to City Hall. Here's a bit of what she said.
Now's the moment for us to come together. 3 days to knock on every door because we're going to fight for housing justice. Now's the moment to knock on doors so that we deliver a Green New Deal in Boston. Fare free transportation, universal pre-K, and childcare for families.
And as Soraya mentioned, with Wu apparently leading this race, there appears to be a contest for that second spot between Acting Mayor Kim Janey and City Councilors Anissa Asabi-George and Andrea Campbell. What did you hear from them?
Well, all 3 were busy over the weekend, and the busiest by far was Andrea Campbell, who sprinted through all of the city's 23 neighborhoods in 2 days. I caught up with her in Roxbury, where she talked about her lived experience growing up poor in Roxbury and going on to Princeton and UCLA Law School. And she said that she's running on that lived experience, but also running on her record as city councilor.
I've done the work when it comes to creating more affordable housing in the city of Boston. I've done the work when it comes to closing the gaps in our education system. I've done the work when it comes to policing reform and ensuring our police department is the most transparent and accountable in the country. And I did that long before George Floyd.
And Arun, there's some evidence that Campbell has some momentum going into tomorrow's vote. Not long ago, she was running well behind in the pack, but the latest polls, as Soraya said, shows her in a statistical tie with Asabi-George and Janey for that second spot.
And Soraya, remind us what the biggest issues have been in this campaign, how they're playing out among the candidates.
Sure. So we've heard a lot this campaign season about housing, about police reform, and about education. I think equity is also a through line in each of those issues. You won't find a candidate in this race that isn't mentioning or thinking about how to foster greater equity between the haves and the have-nots in the city.
And Anthony, looking to the past a little bit, no matter what the outcome, this is going to be a historic election in Boston. The city has never elected a woman or a person of color as mayor, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, for over 200 years, Boston has only elected white men to lead the city. When Mayor Walsh left town to become Joe Biden's Secretary of Labor, Kim Janey, who was then the city council president, became the first woman and the first black person to be mayor. And now she's part of this historically diverse field of candidates. All 5 of them identify as people of color, so no matter who wins, the result will be historic, and a lot of people might say overdue for a city with such a diverse population.
Yeah. And Soraya, just to close things out, a little bit of a meta look at this mayoral race. You and I were talking offline. You said that this has been a strange race to cover. Tell us a little bit about why that is.
It has been both strange and fascinating, partially because of the historic nature of the race, but also we're still contending with the pandemic. And I think we saw nonprofit groups and special interest groups kind of step up and do the work of trying to get the candidates to distinguish themselves. I think it's also unique that Boston has nonpartisan elections, and so if you're not paying really close attention, they can all look the same. I did think it was a bit unfortunate that we saw so many of those groups do that work of distinguishing the candidates for the electorate. I hope that now that we're turning our focus to the preliminary and then the general, that the media landscape will step up and do a little bit more to help voters understand their candidates and what distinguishes them.
Well, it's a great luxury to have the two of you to talk through the mayoral race. Thank you so much. Anthony, thank you.
Thanks, Arun. It's been fun.
Soraya, thank you.
Happy to do it, Arun.
That's Soraya Wintersmith of GBH and Anthony Brooks of WBUR. Before we go, I should tell you what else is up. Boston isn't the only community holding its preliminary elections tomorrow. More than a dozen Massachusetts cities and towns are heading to the polls, including Brockton, Framingham, Gloucester, and Newton, where incumbent mayors are seeking re-election. There are races for open mayoral seats in Somerville and Lynn, while city council races are happening in Malden, Revere, and Worcester. In other news, lawmakers on Beacon Hill are taking a look at roughly 24 bills dealing with alcohol, including legislation to change who controls the allocation of liquor licenses. The back and forth over whether state or local government should have final say over liquor licenses has been going on for years. Jeff Beckwith with the Massachusetts Municipal Association says the current debate comes as communities look at what they can do to make themselves more attractive to shoppers and diners.
Communities have been working to increase the number of liquor licenses that they have so that they can make their downtowns more interesting. So people will go, spend part of a day or an evening, have a meal, and yes, perhaps have a drink.
The state legislature's Joint Committee on Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure is holding a hearing today on this and other alcohol-related issues. Meanwhile, Springfield has become the latest community to reinstate an indoor mask mandate. Health officials say the rule is needed because of an uptick in COVID cases in western Massachusetts. Mark Kerouac is CEO of Bay State Health, the largest hospital system in the western part of the state. He says relatively low vaccination rates are causing problems.
Of 600 inpatients across the state of Massachusetts, 100 are at Bay State. So that's 16% of the inpatients in the state of Massachusetts, even though we only have 5.5% of the beds.
Kerouac says there's also a severe staffing shortage at hospitals in Western Mass. And finally, a funeral is being held in Lawrence today for a local Marine killed in the suicide bombing outside the Kabul airport last month in Afghanistan. The service for Yohani Rosario Pichardo will be private, for family and invited guests only. A public wake is set for tomorrow at Veterans Memorial Stadium next to Rosario Pichardo's alma mater, Lawrence High School. From the newsrooms of WBUR and GBH, the greatest combo in news, I'm Arun Roth. Be well. You like podcasts. Here's one more you might enjoy. From the producers of GBH's Antiques Roadshow, Detours is a podcast about what happens to all those antiques after the cameras leave town. Join Adam Monahan, longtime producer of Roadshow, for stories of sales, fakes, and even federal crimes. Subscribe to Detours wherever you get your podcasts.